In this message, I want to talk about how to have healthy relationships with our parents. And we do that by learning to draw healthy boundary lines. You know what happens. Some of us spend time with our parents where we can't wait to see them pull into the driveway, gather around the dining room table, laugh about old memories, tell old stories, choke back the tears when they leave. But others of us get a knot in our stomach when they arrive. It feels like we're walking on eggshells. Old wounds get dragged to the surface, conversations get strained. We start counting the minutes until they leave. You see, some of us think that once we reach adulthood, the family struggles are over. But nothing could be further from the truth. Focus on the Family Radio Show conducted an informal poll of its listeners, and it asked them, what is the toughest challenge that you face as an adult? Get this, 44% of the adults responded the unwillingness of their parents to let go of the relationship, to release their grown children. And some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. We choose a different career, or we don't call home enough, or we raise our kids differently, or we move out of town and our parents say, how could you leave me alone after all I've done for you? I mean, we've all felt these kinds of tensions in our lives. Now, here's the deal. The fifth commandment says, honor our father and our mother. But how does that fit with Genesis 2, where we're asked to leave our parents and cleave to our own partner and establish our own home? At what point do adult children expect parents' roles to be redefined? How do we relate to parents as adults? And that answer begins in the early stages of child development, where parents are in total control of food, clothing, schedules. You see, God designed it that way, that we take care of those little kids. They're so helpless. But then those kids reach that adolescent stage, those adolescent years, and changes begin to take place. The child begins to feel self-will. The child wants to move out of the old style of relationship and move towards eye-to-eye, peer-to-peer relationships, so that by the early 20s, the child no longer is under the parent's authority. They don't want their parents' authority to be hanging over their lives. That's not a good place to be when parents are just hanging around and still pushing and treating their kids like they were little children. So here's the deal. The biblical pattern is clear. Parents and children should work together to move gradually and responsibly from childhood dependence through adolescence and finally come out the other side as adults, where the adult child loves and honors and respects the parent without feeling manipulated or controlled, and where parents treasure and trust their adult children without the sense that there's still an unhealthy dependence on the child's part on them. They want their child to grow up as well. And all of that, both of those, are a part of God's design. That's how He created us to be. But that can only occur when both parent and child successfully negotiate and navigate the boundaries built into each season of life between the adult and the child. Now, for these boundaries to take place, two things have to occur. First, the parents have to learn to let go and release. Wise parents begin to encourage independent thinking during the elementary years and keep giving out more and more slack, more and more rope, more and more decision-making rope during the teenage years, treating the child more and more like an adult, so that by the time the child reaches adulthood, there's been this gradual, natural progression from total dependency as a little infant to an adult eye-to-eye relationship. 2, as children grow up, they have to learn to form opinions and convictions on their own, so that as they head into adulthood, they really begin to feel like they're independent, like they're real human beings. They have their own sense of identity, that they are confident adults who deserve to be in peer-to-peer relationships with their parents and other adults. I remember when my oldest son was in his 12-year-old, 10 to 12-year-old age, and we were in Colorado back in the mountains near the Continental Divide, all by ourselves. We were climbing a 12,000-foot peak. And I decided, I'm going to teach him a little bit about being on his own. And releasing and his own confidence. And so I set him down in a little hole in the rocks there on the side of the mountain. And I said, you know what? I'll be back in about 20 minutes, 30 minutes or so. I got to do some climbing of my own. You just stay here by yourself. And I left him there on the side of that mountain. It's nothing but giant boulders. The wind's whipping up. It's cold. It's freezing. You're all alone. I left him there. I kept my eye on him. I went around the corner of the mountain and I kept my eye on him just to see what he would do and how he could learn to grow into full, total dependency as an adult. And when I came back, I said, hey, how was it? And he said, oh, great, man. I really feel confident about myself being on the side of a mountain and being alone. Well, he really wasn't alone. I had my eye on him. But there would come a time when he would face things in life like that where he would be alone. We want them to grow into adulthood, into eye-to-eye, peer-to-peer relationships where they have the confidence and the ability and the convictions and the opinions to make it on their own. Both parties have to do their part for a healthy relationship to grow. Sounds simple, doesn't it? Sounds really simple, doesn't it? But it's not. Now, let's say that the parents don't pull back. They don't let go for a variety of reasons. Maybe it's because of the size of the investment and the sacrifice that they put into this kid. Or what if the kid meets an unhealthy need in his parents? That the kid is an extension of their ego, that they start to live vicariously through them. We see this in academics and athletics all the time. For whatever reason, the parent just can't let go. Well, what happens is that this inability to release the child translates into maintaining a high degree of control over a child's life. It overpowers the son or the daughter's opinions of themselves and of their parents. It attempts to manipulate their choices about college, a career, a marriage, or even a church that they should attend. What happens if the parents start keeping score and the paybacks start kicking in? Over time, that controlling dynamic will probably destroy any possibility of a healthy parent-child relationship. Some grown adults will reach the breaking point, as they grow up, the kids. So when they grow up, they'll reach a breaking point and they'll tell your parents, get lost. I mean, there's full-scale rebellion that sets in. Others will allow resentment to build up on the inside and infect the relationship. I just don't like my parents. I'm angry at them. I don't want to be around them. And slowly, the relationship dies a slow death. But either way, most adult kids will opt for no relationship at all with their parents in terms of any kind of intimacy or sharing than to stay in a relationship where they feel controlled or manipulated. So, where do you draw the line? How do you put relationships in order? How do you deal with the baggage and the broken batons of past relationship? Well, again, I just want to tell you one word: boundaries. Boundaries draw limits. Boundaries make distinctions. Boundaries are territorial lines that help us build close, vulnerable relationships without losing our sense of separateness, of the individuality, of the identity that defines who we are as people. Boundaries help answer the question, what's permissible and what's not? Boundaries answer the question, do I need to respond to every wish and desire to honor my parents, or are there limits for their benefit and for mine? Boundaries allow a young mother to say to her mother, I think the fact that you decided to have 12 kids and grow up and live on a farm and raise them on a farm was great. But for me, as I look at my life and my career and my husband, I think I just want to have one kid. That seems just right for me. I mean, you can like that or you might not like that, but it's not going to change my decision. And if mom doesn't sign on to that, well, guess what? Guess what? That's mom's problem, not the daughter's. You see, boundaries help the daughter define what she wants to have in her life as an adult. Boundaries help her understand, my mother is hurt, But that's my mother's problem, not mine. I'm not responsible for my mother's happiness. Her hurt is caused by her attitude, not mine. My mother has to let go. She's got to let go of her daughter, of me. She's got to let me grow up and have a life of my own. And the daughter needs to learn how to say no to her mom. She needs to learn to say, Mom, I love you, but I'm sorry that you're angry with me. That's something you'll have to deal with. That's something that you're going to have to live with in your life, but not in mine, because I'm an adult now and I get to make, for better or for worse, I get to make my own decisions. And if I need your opinion, I'll ask for it. I'll let you know. But until then, I'd just be happy to make my own decisions with my own family. You see, boundaries allow the daughter to disagree with the parent that she loves and respects and still loves them. She can still love them by drawing boundaries. And if that sounds difficult and complicated, guess what? It is. But it's the essence of growing into adulthood. And when you learn to set those boundaries, when you learn to love with limits, there's no resentment, there's no blaming. The daughter learns to live with the consequences of her choices, and the mother learns to live with her attitude about her daughter's choices. And that's the way God designed it to be, to grow into healthy relationships in adulthood. Do you remember the story of the prodigal son in Luke chapter 15? It's the story of a father who lavishes great gifts on his son as he's growing up. And then as the child reaches adolescence or adulthood, he leaves home. He tells the father, I don't want any of your stuff. I'm not thankful. I'm not having a spirit of gratitude or nothing like that. I've had it with you, Dad. I don't want to be around here. I'm going to go out and live on my own. And he does. He just squanders his wealth. And then Luke tells us he came to his senses. He came to his senses and he realized what he had given up, because now he had nothing left. And he decides, I need to go back home to my father. But he's the one that I left, that I took advantage of. And so he's just going to make me a servant. But being a servant in my father's house is better than being poor and broke here, living with pigs and eating pig food. And that's pretty much literally the way Luke describes that. And Jesus is telling the story. Yeah, he lost everything. He threw it all away. Then he comes to his senses. And he goes back home. But really, what I want you to catch here, really, this isn't a story about the prodigal son. It's a story about the father. Because what does the father do? Well, it says from the moment that the son leaves, the father stands looking on the horizon, waiting for his son to return. He waits and he waits and he waits and he waits and he waits for his son to return. He's released him. He's let him go. And now he knows that all he can do is wait and pray and hope. That's all he can do. He can't go out there and rescue his son. That'd be the worst thing he could do. Just let him go. Release him. Release him. So he stood back. He let go of the controls of the life of his son, and he waited. And when he saw the sun on the horizon, the son came home and they embraced and they met. Oh, what an amazing scene that must have been. They embraced, they hugged, they held each other, they wept, they cried, put a ring on his fingers and a coat around his shoulders, and kill the fatted calf. Let's have a great celebration like a king has come home. That which has been lost is now found. It's a story about the father. The father just waited. He released. He let go. Now, in this story, there's a good ending that the son comes home, but they don't always come home. There's a lot of ache and pain about being a parent. We never stop being a parent. We never stop watching our children go through the kinds of things that we had to go through, that we so desperately want to tell them, I'll tell you how to do that. But we can't do it. We have to wait, let go of the controls, release. It's a story of a father who waited for his son. And when he came home, he treated that son like the son of a king. He was so happy that he came home. It was the story of a father united to his son. But what if our parents don't let go? What if some of our parents don't wait? They don't release? What if their personalities are intimidating? They're strong-willed personalities. They're never going to let go. They're controlling, filled with a sense of disapproval towards us. That's what we feel. They just can't let go, and they disapprove when we don't go in their direction. Well, what happens then? Well, that's when we have to lay down our own boundaries and say, I still love you. I care about you. I respect you. But you're no longer an authority in my life. You're not the authority figure in my life. And I know this is difficult. It's hard to draw these kinds of boundaries, but the boundaries have to be set or they'll ruin your life as an adult. Boundaries help keep us from resentment, from developing a sense that we don't want to be around our parents. Boundaries help us to know that we can love our parents, not out of a spirit of obligation or of guilt, but out of a spirit of love and respect, and yet not be bound and controlled and manipulated by our parents. Can you see the importance of drawing boundary lines? Boundaries that define what's healthy and what's not. Boundaries that say no trespassing. No trespassing relationally, spiritually, vocationally, career-wise, marriage, kids, God. No trespassing. If you can learn to draw those kinds of boundary lines, love with limits, that's the essence of the path to adulthood in your life and mine. And God wants all of us to find that path, and not only find it, but He wants us to walk along that path into adulthood. And I pray that we can all find and walk on that path into adulthood. That is God's biblical plan of growing up, being set free, and becoming who God created for us to be. Find that path, walk on it, set your boundaries. They will set you free.